Hi everyone, welcome to the Back 40 Feet where we talk about suburban, urban, and patio gardening. Today I'm going to talk about critter proofing. There are lots of critters that love to eat in the garden, and there's some things that you can do to help decrease their intrusion. I'm an organic gardener, I get it, things are going to eat my garden at times. A little bit's fine, but a lot I am not okay with. So let's try to keep things out of the garden as much as possible without causing any harm. The first critter I'm going to talk about today are rabbits. I have a lot of bunnies. All winter long I've had bunnies. They fortunately like to eat the clover that is in my grass. They would prefer that over my vegetable garden, which is awesome because I don't have to worry as much about bunnies. And I have really stupid bunnies. Last year, I had a bunny eat through my net trellising to get to some beans. It was a trellis. It could have just walked around the trellis. It was a one-dimensional, like, there was no reason that it needed to go through it. He just needed to walk around. It's that dumb. For the most part, anytime I've had damage from bunnies, it's because they've just been opportunistic. It's like, there it is, let's go eat it. Again, I still have no idea why it ate through a net trellis. If I can just put up a 2-foot fence around my garden, that's usually enough to discourage the bunnies. And a 2-foot fence isn't that bad because I can just easily step over it to get to my garden. It's still easy to weed, and I don't really need to build a gate. I could, I don't have to. It might be easier. What I use for my 2-foot fence is called hardware cloth, and I'll show you that in a minute. And it's, I chose to use a 1/2-inch hardware cloth. It's just what I had. And it's a pretty heavy steel and it's a pretty rigid structure, so I don't need to use too many supports to set it up. And I definitely don't have a gate on it. So let's go take a look at that, and then I'll show you some other options. So this is hardware cloth, and if I zoom in here, you can see that it's really just 1/2-inch squares. Here's the fencing that I use, and then I just have these metal posts, you can kind of see them from afar, that I end up tying, just using little zip ties here, right there, to these posts to keep them there. So I try to keep it right close to the ground and then use earth staples so they don't get underneath it. The other thing I can do is using wood. I can just staple this to the bottom of the hardware cloth, and that means that the bunnies are not going to be able to easily get underneath it. Yes, they could dig a hole if they want to, but I just don't have that very motivated bunnies. Here is another option that people sometimes will use. I wouldn't recommend it for bunnies, but this is called bird netting. It's called bird netting because that's what it's intent for. You can see how thin it is. And because it's nice and light, it's very easy to be able to throw over your vegetables or your blueberries or any other type of fruiting tree to keep the birds from pecking at it. You can even make like a little net shelter for some of your plants if you wanted to, but it's just nylon. This is not going to keep out anything that has teeth. The chipmunks will be super happy if you use it because they can get underneath it really easily, and then they have no predators to have to worry about, so they don't even have to look up at the hawks above. Squirrels will go through this, raccoons, you name it. I wouldn't use these for bunnies. If a bunny is stupid enough to go through my net trellis, it's going to go through this. But this is a nice option for birds. It wouldn't work for deer either because it's just so lightweight. But if you do see it and say, oh, well, that looks really cheap and easy to put up, just keep in mind, what is it that you're trying to keep out? This really is intended to kind of be over plants, not as a fence. This is another option that you can use. It's a bit cheaper than the hardware cloth. This is called chicken wire, and I'm not sure how well you can see, there we go, how well you can see, but they're octagons, and it's about a 1-inch octagon. So this will keep out most things. It won't keep out chipmunks, but we're talking about bunnies today. And what's nice about chicken wire is it's very flexible, at least the gauge that I have here. So it's very easy to make it go around different pieces of my garden. The problem with it being flexible as it is that I also need to provide it with a little bit more support, otherwise it'll start to flop over. And at the bottom, I could still use the same wooden concept that we saw in the hardware cloth, or I could just use the earth staples, a little bit more frequent in spacing than I would have to do with a hardware cloth, because this is very flexible. But chicken wire is a lot cheaper. This is 2-foot chicken wire, but you can also get that in taller. I think it can go up to 4 feet, probably bigger than that. So if you have deer, you may want to consider that. But again, you're going to have to put your fence posts closer together. And if you have something taller than this 2 feet, you're going to have to figure out somehow some type of gated structure to be able to get into your garden.
And there's the bunny that lives in my yard, just eating clovers, hangs out there all day long. I could probably step on it if I wasn't paying attention, and sometimes I have. So yeah, I do have bunnies, just not the smartest bunnies.